Huh. This is supposed to be a scary game? It's honestly rather relaxing. The environment, the music, just look at this place. Never mind. The haunted PS1 subgenre is fascinating to me, but I did have a PS1 growing up. I found myself far more nostalgic for the PS2 era of gaming, which admittedly comprised most of my young childhood. But there really is something special about the PS1 era of horror and gaming that works oh so well. There's a really good reason that is imitated fairly often today. Limitation breeds creativity is a rather famous sentiment now, one that's been quoted and rephrased many times, and rightfully so. When we have a defined limit, a ceiling, it makes what is built under it all the more impressive. Just take a look at popular indie games. Hades, Stardew Valley, Vampire Survivors, and so on. These games have redefined their respective genres. So many people are making so many amazing works of art, and usually just from their bedrooms or at most, a small studio. These works feel infinitely more impressive than the biggest, newest Call of Duty blockbuster, because the ceiling that, say, Call of Duty has isn't limited by a budget, but instead by committee-defined set of ideas that must be hit on to make money. Whereas limitations that we see in the indie space and smaller studios tend to be the inverse, where money and resources are limited, so they can't make the perfect committee-made Call of Duty, but their creativeness isn't limited, so they make something that is truly unique. And within horror gaming, this creativity found in limitation bred an entire generation of games that were, by definition, limited, yet immensely creative, like, famously, The Fog within Silent Hill. It began as a way to mask a hardware limitation on how much of a map could be seen at once, but then became an iconic staple of the game's atmosphere, to the point that when a port of Silent Hill has bad fog, it's noticed and called out. And even remakes of these games still have to implement the fog the way it is because it's that iconic. The return of the PS1 era of horror may be confusing to some. Why make a game with this limited, at least on the surface, framework? And the answer to me is threefold. 1. The aesthetic is just genuinely inspired and creepy. Something about earlier rendering of environments and characters is far more unnerving than a photorealistic version of them. And frankly, stylized graphics, which the PS1 tended to have, age far better than an attempt at photorealism, no matter how impressive at the time. 2. Admittedly, nostalgia. There's a charm to something that reminds us of the past, even if that past wasn't ours. There's a word for this from my beloved Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, anemoia. 3. It is more accessible for small developers, due to the aesthetic's limitations, as well as their own limitations, such as budget and the power of their own at-home machines making the game. This makes a more affordable genre that has quite a lot of appeal. And the topic of today's video, Fatum Betula, I think is a perfect game to analyze within the haunted PS1 pantheon of game design. Fatum Betula is a very limited game on paper. The entire of the gameplay is based around, more or less, 2 mechanics. There are only a handful of zones, and a single run of the game can be done in as quick as 5 minutes. But that's not to say it is a poor game, not at all. Its presentation, gameplay, and story are all quite limited, but within that limitation is something very special indeed. Fatum Betula was made by a, at the time, 19-year-old sole developer working off of Unity by the name of Bryce Booker. The game was first released in a demo state on the 2020 edition of the haunted PS1 demo disc, which Bryce also helped make the launcher for. The fact that Bryce was closing out his teens when he made this game, I think, is rather evident within the game itself. And while you may think what I just said was an insult, it is actually the furthest thing from it. The existentialism and angst that can come from that stage of life is palpable, and given that I'm not too far away from that age now, my mid-20s, it resonated with me greatly. And some moments within the game made my heart skip a beat as the words and visuals passed over me. For a game made by a young and fairly inexperienced person, the game is technically impressive. The 5th generation console aesthetics are immaculately done. It feels like something that could have run that hardware, even if it technically couldn't. The limited way things load in is a very accurate emulation of the time. There are even things like how old games would save resources by making what appears to be several objects just a single one. Like an entire forest of trees that's technically just one object within the game world with the texture of a tree repeated upon it, rather than putting individually placed trees, which would be tough on early 3D game engines. Which reminds me of the PS1 Harry Potter game I grew up playing, in the way the Forbidden Forest in that game was done, which is nearly identical to this game. The music done by Simone Peltier, similarly, is hauntingly good, fitting straight into the era it is trying to emulate. The sometimes beautifully serene environmental music is genuinely calming. There's also terrifying music that immediately makes you think something is wrong, or maybe even glitched within the game, yet it's done on purpose. The world is straightforward to navigate, with only a handful of interconnecting levels that all meet back at a central crossroads. But while it may appear relatively simple at first, there are many hidden locations, entities, and items. This makes for greatly engaging exploration. Just when I thought I had found everything in the game, something else revealed itself. A new zone led to several more, or a new item, a new character, or a new liquid. And yes, I did just say a new liquid. We'll get to it. The world of Fatum Betula is best described as dreamlike in every aspect. The visuals, the dialogue, and interactions with the game world. It comes close to having some of that moon logic that appears in adventure games, yet it doesn't quite reach into fully unknowable absurdity. The rules of the game, though often obscure and strange, feel consistent with the world itself, and everything has a hint to it somewhere, be it in a note, item, or dialogue. There also isn't anything like a fail state, just solely many paths to many different endings. The characters of Fatum Betula are probably the thing I'm most mixed on within the game, which is upsetting since I love many things about them. I find their aesthetic inspiration fantastic. An artist's destroyed body made of only bones and viscera and a beret is a strong example. His own intestines are used as an almost tasteful scarf. Looking at him can infer a lot about his character. Everything about him just screams pretentious, artsy, and wacky. There's the suffering, immobile immortal with his terrifyingly long, rotten legs that seem to melt into the ground. He doesn't just say immortality is suffering, you can see it, clearly. Or the beast. A cute creature that's supposed to originally be a raccoon, but I mean, that's a cat. Funnily enough, in the dev's future game, Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia, he leaves a reference to this with one of the fish you can catch called a catfish, which bears the beast design. The beast is very cute. One you may say is at odds with the rest of the game, but I would disagree. His cute appearance serves a very real purpose when you have to... The visual design of the characters are just so good. These are some amazing designs that, and I mean this as a complete compliment, feel like designs that would have trended on early Tumblr and other social media places. If any of you see that as an insult, I don't know what to say, just had to have been there. But despite their impressive designs, the characters are at most given 2 to 3 variables of dialogue. Their initial greeting, which usually hints at some purpose or quest, then when that purpose is fulfilled, you get a second dialogue and a reward. Usually a liquid of some kind, and occasionally there's a third dialogue for unique variables and side things that you do to them or the environment. This means the characters, though having amazingly striking designs, and sometimes engaging dialogue, never fully become anything more than the idea of a character, rather than becoming a fully realized one. I would have loved some branches in dialogue as well, like being able to talk back to them or allowing them to say more of their backstory or worldview. Though not being able to speak to them certainly has its benefits. It increases the distant feeling the player character has, but as it is, we get scarcely little for what could have been iconic characters. But given the game is entirely based around replaying to get one of 11 endings, we could have used some more variables each time we seek those endings, since a lot of them require repeated steps. And each of those endings revolve around a different liquid being placed into the pool surrounding the birch. Alright, it's about time I explain the liquids. Also, there are some spoilers ahead. I will be spoiling 2 endings of the game, so if you want to avoid that, skip to the end. Fatum Betula is a world without a past, trying to define its future reality. And the reality that does exist currently is questionable, and those living within it often feel vague and limited, though through no fault of their own. In the same way, those we pass by in dreams are not defined. The characters here are cursed to be limited by the confines of a dream of a game with a limited world that's still determining its future. And we will be the ones that determine that future. We awaken in this new world in a hallway, the light streaming in from the sides and a staircase up to a tree, floating in the air, surrounded by a pool of water. When I first played the game, I was unsure what to do, and the game doesn't tell you. Eventually I found that I had an inventory, and in it, a letter. Some say the air itself has a face. It's true, a child once bore witness to its piercing eyes. Wrecked with grief, she traveled to the end of a narrow stone path atop a river, and pleaded the cold to show itself. The sight of nothing stole her gaze, and she waited still. A horrible row of teeth soon reflected her image, and she was gone. We are given 3 empty vials from this being and told it is our duty to feed this birch, the world tree. And whatever we empty into its waters will shape this world into something new. The being talks about how this world and tree are the same, and the waters around it a limbo, how the plant is our fate, and its water our fuel. It warns us to not feed it what we plead, and with that, the strange being leaves the moment it exits our sight. It took me a while to realize how to get the creature to appear, as you have to read the note at the very end of the platform in the water. Reading it anywhere won't do, though there is a hint to do this within the note itself. I've also read that it will appear if you wait around long enough as a failsafe. There's already some intriguing and surreal dialogue here. It sets a mood that is off-putting, yet also strangely comforting, as the creature here is not evil. It may be frightening looking, but nothing it said in the least was a threat, or even that dark beyond its own ramblings about existence. And despite its terrifying appearance, it will never attack us. And for that matter, nothing else within the game's world will. The area around us is the definition of liminal, a place in between. The water itself is limbo. In this strange room with the staircase, rays of light, and the water and tree are the outward expression of it. A waiting room, a threshold. What the creature has given us and told us to do is really all there is to the game, which is not to say the game is underdeveloped or doesn't have its own twists and turns. Hearing the meaning of the game, you may question, if the goal was just to find one liquid to empty into the tree's water, we would only be given 1 vial, but instead, we were given 3. Well, astute viewer, you would be correct. Having 3 of the vials gives us the ability to use certain liquids to solve puzzles, combining them into new mixed liquids, or even empty other liquids into other bodies of water to change parts of the world. In addition to these vials and liquids, we will find items throughout the game to assist us. In total, there are 10 different endings, or well, 11 technically, and some of these can be reached within minutes of starting the game, and others require a complex chain of events. And for that matter, just when you think you have found everything, every zone, every character, every liquid, you decide to try one more corner and, well, there's more. For a game that is so short, it feels expansive due to this level of secrecy. You first play around with the things that you find in the open, and from there branch off, finding more and more things to do. If all the zones were easily accessible from the start, this would make the game appear as small as it is. But the creator found how to make these limitations work for them, and they work very well, especially in making the game appear deceptively large by staggering the reveals. We exit the entrance and find ourselves within the first zone, the door we just emerged from floating sideways. This area is a crossroads of sorts, with 2 obvious paths, one left and one right, and a few other secret ones. For the sake of this story, we're drawn to the right, as I was when I first played the game. Across a bridge perched above a chasm that seems to have no end, and beyond it, a narrow path through a forest. What will this area be? As it loads, I felt a sense of anxiety and... oh, it's a picturesque valley. It's beautiful. Trees all around us, a nice bridge over a ditch leading up to a staircase crowned by a torii gate. But it still feels off. The skybox moves around on an axis. The gaps in the clouds almost look like eyes, right? Or am I just imagining that? It puts me on edge in a way that a game made with realistic graphics in a more HD skybox never could. We turn to the left of the bridge and notice a blade stabbed into one of the lone trees, pinning a note in place. Here, we find our first non-vial item, a brittle knife that we can use for a few different things before it breaks. After we give the knife a test swing, we return to read the note. It reads, "If you're reading this, I'm dead. This tool once aided my research. I hope it will do you the same. Be warned, I fear this blade has become weak with age, and it may only have a few strikes in it. We pocket the knife and climb the stairs to the Torii Gate. Japanese characters on it, simply reading Birch. If that matter, the name of the game is just Latin for Fate of the Birch. Fitting? When we pass under the Torii Gate, we see a gorgeous clearing, surrounded on all sides by trees with a fish-filled pond, and walkable lily pads leading to a lone house on a small island, where a cherry blossom tree leans lazily, calmly, over the water. Moving around the sides of this tiny island, we find the stairs up, and also spot a boat tied with a rope to the cherry blossom. Returning to the house, we see a bed and activate it. We are suddenly hit with a loading screen. I get nervous. When we awake, the pleasant, calming music is replaced by this terrifying, dissonant song. It honestly reminds me of the song of Unhealing from the Ben Drowned creepypasta. And say what you will about Ben Drowned, or creepypastas in general, that song is iconically spooky. In addition to the music, the sky, ground, trees, everything is replaced by a pink background. Japanese text spread across every surface saying the birch is dead. I also noticed at the base of one of the trees what appears to be a visual glitch, yet it's not. I'll save that for later. In front of the cherry blossom is now a strange floating figure. I run back inside the house and go back to sleep and pray to wake up. The pleasant music is returned, the text is gone, and this is really the moment when the game grabbed me and kept me hooked. Though there's still a moment we will discuss later where this game went from simply hooking me to full-on affecting me. But for now, this moment when you realize, oh, just clicking on that bed can do this, you suddenly start clicking everything. Exploring the rest of the clearing, I find a lone tree with a gravestone beneath it. The carvings upon it read, "A gravestone for a fisherman lies here. May we see him in our dreams." I explore the rest of the clearing and find little else. I begrudgingly return to the house and sleep again, waking up in that nightmare world. You can actually see in the recording the moment where I paused to use Google Translate in the sky. I go to speak to the strange creature that we had seen before. Have you seen a painting around here? I saw it a long time ago, and it won't leave my mind. I've traveled a long time to see it, and yet it's gone. Such is death, I guess. Talking to it again just replays the same dialogue. We explore the clearing now in this flipped reality. Over towards the gravestone of the fisherman now hangs a noose from the tree. The gravestone now reads, "Please cut my shackle of rope." Using the blade, we cut the noose, and now, in place of the now disappeared grave, is a figure, dressed in a limbless robe. A hand is its head, with a single red eye in its center. I tried to see if this design correlated to any actual spirits, ghosts, or yokai, and found that no, though they instead have eyes in the palms of their hand, like the pale man in Pan's Labyrinth. Speaking of the fisherman's spirit, he says, "I was a man once. A dangerous fish caused my fate. Its flesh could kill an immortal, but it can't harm plants. An immortal's death will never matter, though. Ghosts can't die. The boredom is too much, and I wish to poison the future. You need to feed this fruit to a mammal with a beating heart. Take the victim's blood. I know of the plant. Please kill it. Save us all from eternity. We need non-existence." He then drops a fruit on the ground. A ghost that wishes for release, begging that immortality is not worth it. This is one of the central ideas of Fatum Betula, one that resonates quite a bit with me. In fact, I have a video on this channel talking about my fear of non-existence. This idea that either way you can't win. Even that I may be wrong in my fear of non-existence, and that is in fact preferable to the horror of life or undeath. After we take the fruit, we continue around the pond and head towards where I'd seen that glitch. But as we what is that? This strange thing that simply says, "My existence is impossible." And the absurdity of this both amused me, but also slightly disturbed me. All these accidental ramblings on existence and stuff, and then just this. It's kind of messing with me. We go to sleep and wake back up in the normal world. Well, normal is a bit of a stretch. We see in the home there's a painting. One with the fisherman lying dead next to a red and white fish. Clicking on it enlarges it. Could this be the painting the artist is looking for? Sure enough, the painting is missing from the other world, but how do we bring it to him? I cut the rope holding the boat, and follow it to where it drifts and take the fishing pole from it. Fishing minigame unlocked, hell yeah! I catch a few fish, and it's honestly kind of nice to just sit in this pretty area, fish, and be left to think. A small moment of reflection. this game, this world can be beautiful. With the fish and fruit in hand, we return to the crossroads, now to explore the other path. But before we do, we find the beast, this goofy, kind-looking creature that smiles on its cute face. I don't know how long I've been here. There is constant pain in my empty stomach. The short dialogue made me feel bad for the poor thing, and as I go and grab the fish, I realize, wait, no. We need to feed the fruit to a thing with a beating heart and kill it, and take its blood. No. I'm not gonna kill this creature. I will find something else that we can do it to. I give the fish instead of the fruit to the beast, and it eats. After, it says, "Thank you for the energy, I needed it. Now I should return the favor. Here, take this for your troubles." Although I can hardly remember my home, all I can seem to recall is fire. And our reward emerges from the bush behind it. A pot full of oil, presumably some of the same used to burn the poor beast's home down. And with that we have our first new liquid, but not the last. We could return to the birch now and use the oil, but we don't. I want to explore some more first. The beast has nothing more to say unless you do something else to him. Something I won't spoil for this video. There's scarce dialogue. I just want more. I'm intrigued. We go through the other path at the crossroads and emerge at a beautiful autumnal forest. Giant-like trees forming a canopy of leaves covering the sky, allowing only a few beams of light to shine through. There are leaves falling all around us, and a calm stream running through the area. It is idyllic, absolutely beautiful. I could genuinely keep the screen on as just a background to relax to. As we explore, we find that within the forest is a small cabin. The cabin immediately changes the mood. Dark wood with no furnishings, 2 windows illuminating the dim room, and a ramp leading to a basement below. Within, a thing, creature, a man, clearly once human or close to it, but dissolved to just bone, wilted flesh, and blood. I love the detail of his design, of his legs and arms being impossibly long, like shadowy illusions stretching beyond where they should be, or even his fleshy roots digging into the ground. When we try and speak to him, he stays silent for a moment, then begins, "I'm not dead. I nearly forgot how to speak in my time here. Long ago, I was gifted immortality. At first, I was relieved, but 50 years into my new situation, I began to rot. I became hungry, and I was too weak to hunt. I can only stare at this wall. I forgot how to think. I forgot meaning. Please don't leave me here. If you do, please come back to kill me." What a bleak conversation. Yet again we encounter another person in the version of undeath. This time one who achieved immortality for himself, but not his body. Suffering an absolute psychosis, with nothing but boredom and pain. Technically alive, though only by the most liberal definition. Their ranting and even forgetting how to think disturbed me. We try and give them the fruit, but they can't eat it. We try and cut them with the blade, but it won't kill them. I tried, but we can't end their suffering yet. We leave the man alone again to a fate far worse than death. Exiting the cabin and back into the forest, we explore some more. Aside from the waterfall and stream below it, we find notes on potions and a possible path up. But for the purposes of this review, I'm not going to cover everything in this game. So these things can be left to be discovered by you when you play. Though we also find something that is relevant to the plot of this video. We find a well, beside it a jar. We grab the jar and jump into the well. We find a massive library. Within it, a wizard smoking a pipe, and a page of a book that reads, Magical Fetishes, Volume 2, page 33. There exists tales of a glass jar that can only hold what is remembered. It captures art that is truly desired by the eyes of a late beholder. Memories of the dead can take form within the jar, and it is often highly... The page ends here. We speak to the pipe-smoking wizard now. Who the hell are you? You know what? It doesn't matter. Maybe you can help me. You are standing before my life's work. I categorize and study magical phenomenon. As such, here and there I've been cursed. One such affliction is that I cannot open wooden doors. I'm stuck. My final wish is to create something without death. Unfortunately, the skull of a previous immortal is needed. The only one I know of lives behind a wooden door. Just my luck. If you can get me this skull, we may never have to meet death. This character, unlike the others that we've met so far, aside from the beast I suppose, is seeking to avoid death. But for now it seems within the jar, we have the solution to the artist's problem. Leaving the library returned us to the starting room, the door that we entered it with not appearing behind us. We exit and return to the fisherman's hut, and throw the jar at the painting, and sure enough, it catches the painting within it. We sleep and give the jar to the artist. Oh my god, you found it. It's not quite as profound as I remember. I guess I was setting myself up for disappointment, though. For an eternity, this painting has only existed in my mind. Well, it's still gorgeous, and I am beyond thankful. Here, this is literally my only other possession. And then a jar emerges, and within it, another new liquid. Liquid bone. The ending for Liquid Bone, I'm sorry, I gotta show it to you. It's fantastic, right? At this point, I wandered around for a while, trying to find another option than killing our beast. I could have used the other liquids for another ending, but I was dedicated to following through with the fisherman's request for some reason. Finally, after finding the wizard wouldn't eat the fruit, I couldn't kill the immortal, I caved in, and I felt terrible, but I gave the poor hungry beast the fruit. He ate it, graciously, trusting me, and then he fell, dead. I took the vial and extracted some of his blood, now called poison. I tried to give the poison to the immortal, end his suffering, try and have a good deed after a bad one, but I couldn't. I honestly felt terrible. Returning to the fisherman's ghost, poisonous blood in hand, he speaks. You have returned. Please remember to take their blood. It will be poison. I can't bear this reality any longer. Please kill the birch. I still wandered, seeing if I could find anything, but failed to do so in this timeline. And so, I entered the birch's room, poison in hand, and emptied it into the birch's waters, the water becoming a sickening color, and then immediately, darkness. At first, a long silence. Nothing on screen, until finally, ellipses show, then words. Nothing. There is nothing. This history is erased. There isn't a pair of eyes to see what you've undone, no ears to hear the silence, not a mouth to say goodbye. The only being left is outside of this fiction. I'm sure eventually you won't remember this world, though. Death will make sure of it. Ending 0. Nothing to worry about. Wow. The final words to this ending have stuck with me. Just the sheer, honest slap in the face of this voiceless narrator saying, they're sure we won't remember this world eventually, and that death will make sure of it. It's just so raw. I almost want to say it sounds defeatist, but it isn't. It isn't even pessimistic. It is just true. A harsh truth, but a truth nonetheless. I like it a lot, even if it did give me a slightly existential panic. Interesting fact, according to Steam Achievements, this is the second most commonly achieved ending, meaning for a lot of players this was their first or second ending, myself included. The first most achieved is Parasites, winning out by just 0.7%, which involves using the beast's oil. But regardless, this is interesting to me, as there is a fairly long path to get this ending in comparison to others. It also does feel to be the one the game guides you towards the most, though perhaps I only feel that way since it was my first. The numbering is also interesting. Number 0. I suppose that could just be a joke on 0 being nothing, but regardless, this ending made me sit in contemplation for a bit. The other endings seem clear to me now. The oil, the liquid bone, and so on. And I believed I had seen everything the game had prepared, and that all the other liquids would just be in these 2-3 areas. I was wrong. Immediately upon re-entering the game, I walked around the first area a little bit, and found that if I went past the beast, and up the hill that I assumed was unscalable, to the right of him, and went behind a bush on that hill, an entire new area unlocked, and one that led me to the ending that affected me the most in this entire game. If you wish to avoid further spoilers, skip this time on screen. Otherwise, stick around, as this next section genuinely shook me to my core. It does get a little personal. Passing above the beast onto the hill and through the bushes into the new zone, we find ourselves in a gazebo on an island, the sound of seagulls in our ears. Sitting on the beach is someone in deep-sea diving gear, taking in the scenery, the submarine pulled to dock on the island. Calmly, they speak. Such a beauty she is. The sea, her shape is constantly shifting. Her color is perfect. I hope I can look at this work of art the rest of my days. Please, don't put anything in her. An interesting change from other NPCs we've met. He's the only one who seems content, even if it is within inaction, an acceptance of just appreciating all that is around him. Leaving him alone, we can go into a submarine, at which point we suddenly appear in the bottom of the ocean's floor. A broken building within sight. Now, most of the time, the only thing that can be found inside the building is a key, which is needed for another ending, but there is a rare chance for Ezekiel to appear. Who is Ezekiel, you ask? This is Ezekiel. I'm sure like most of you, I find Ezekiel and all biblically accurate angels, in general, unnerving. The extra detail on Ezekiel, there being a baby inside the star within the rotating wheels of eyes, is even more freaky to me. When I approach, he says, "You are going to hell in real life." I honestly don't know how to respond to this. I think in some ways it is humorous, the sheer absurd bluntness of it, but the truth is it greatly unnerved me when I was playing this the first time. The game, for the most part, immersed me, and fourth wall breaks of this caliber within horror games can bother me. There's nothing more to Ezekiel, just a being breaking through the reality of this game world to tell us we're all going to hell in real life. Excellent. Within this ocean floor, there's another thing to speak to. I say things, I'm actually not sure what it's supposed to be. It looks borderline Lynchian, like the arm in Twin Peaks. It is a statue, I think, with long tubes rising above, and they're connected to the floor, allowing speech. It says, "Oh, hey, I've been here a while. Not much to look at, really. We're kind of blocked off. I don't think anyone has ever been any farther below. I am very curious about what could be down there. If only that seaweed wall would just die." Much like the previous ending we covered, this ending requires us to do a horrible action that makes me feel really bad. Before it was murdering the beast, and now we gotta poison the ocean. Rising above, I take some of the beast's oil into a vial and dump it within the ocean. The entirety of it turned a horrible, viscous black. The diver responds, "I literally hate you." Now, this one did make me laugh, even if I felt really bad. It's just a perfect, concise bit of dialogue. Nothing else needs to be said. Just, "I literally hate you." We dive below again and speak to the statue thing, and it says, "The sea's ruined." "Oh, the seaweed is dead. Well, I'm not going anywhere." And so we go where the seaweed wall once stood. The vibrant green it once was, now black and tarnished, and beyond it, a chasm that long fall into the abyss. We take it. After a short loading screen, we emerge in a suburb. An endless suburb. The sky blue with a few clouds, and repeats of the average suburban home on the same design, the same doors, the same sanitary green yards. We go to one of the houses and open the door. A TV is playing, a mother is cleaning the dishes, and this feels wrong, more wrong than anything else in this game. It is eerie, we are not supposed to be here, I am not supposed to be here. The places we have been previously, sure, have been fantastical and frightening, but this feels wrong. We turn around and leave. We run down the road, trying desperately to see if anything changes, but it doesn't. It just goes on forever. The same house emerging from the fog over and over, the same mailbox, the same stupid picket fences we run. But finally I realize nothing is going to change. I open the door, and there we emerge in the same house. No matter what door I take, it is the same house. I move quickly throughout the house, looking, a window, a bookshelf, and Mom? Mom's face is rotating on an axis as she cleans and speaks. Hey, kiddo! Better get outside once in a while. He gets really upset when you linger in front of that TV. Now you better be watching that plant you keep in your room. Now, there, sweetie. I'm sure it's still alive. I'll be washing this dish for the next week or so. The sound of the TV feels as if it gets louder when she is speaking. And when she finishes, the TV becomes even more drawing. And what is this she said about the plant in my room? The birch? Walked to the TV, and this image shocked me the first time I saw it. The skinny body, the head and arm cut off at random angles, and it is silent at first. And in the background we can hear the laugh tracks of the TV on repeat, and it speaks. Hey kids, don't vote. If we hate you, stop. Nothing should change. My arm is stuck in the wall. Say nice things for money. Red lines are neat. Anyone can achieve our dreams. Your neighbor isn't who they seem. I can't move. One day you'll find a hole in your heart. If we are above you, pull yourself up. Your memory fails you. If you have trauma, don't. Your parents' net worth mean a lot to us. I don't care about you. Differences bring the people without them together. Fail to accept entropy. You are your bone structure. Do terrible things for money. Buy a gun. Stay in bed and die. Buy what we want you to want. We've made the world a perfect place. You can't be smart unless you've paid for it. Any changes you want to make are unreasonable. I scan through the TV again and again, the laughs becoming greater and greater and grating as I climb the stairs. The door to my left is my bedroom, the birch room to the right, a long, crooked, and warped hallway. I run through it. Opening it, I emerge into the living room. Mom is gone, and instead, an abstract figure sits on the ground in front of the TV. I pause. I feel, I know who this is, and still I approach. I attempt to speak to it to myself, but I say nothing back. I turn to the TV. A single message displayed over the image, now no laugh track. You look just like your father. You can see in this footage that I linger on this for a moment, and genuinely disturbed, I walk back and run to the door outside. I'm going to pause here in the recollection of this game, because I have a lot to say. This right here is what elevated this game for me. Before, I thought it was a good indie horror game, using the PS1 style of horror to tell an aesthetically compelling, if albeit limited, story. But this changed that. I will admit that that is largely due to my own personal experiences and thoughts on the game. First, the messages on the TV I absolutely adore. I want to preface this with something I've already said in the video, but it is very important. This game was made by a single teenage developer. That is impressive, but that's not why I'm bringing it up. I think it contextualizes this game, in this scene in particular, and makes its meaning and its spirit absolutely known. It frankly makes it amazingly valuable as a time capsule in a single person's experience and mind state at a certain time. This game to me, and I'm not at all saying this is Bryce's actual experience, but to me, this is the perfect expression of a young person disquieted in life, upset with politics, the state of the world in life, and struggling with very complex philosophical concepts like death, hell, immortality, family, disillusionment, perhaps even disassociation. Within this, I found immense kinship. I struggled greatly with these things as well. I struggled even more when I was the age Bryce was when he made this game. I'm not much older now. I believe I'm only a year older than Bryce, if I got his age right. Putting myself in my mid-20s. The TV scene is the ultimate expression of all these thoughts. It feels like an angry panic attack put to a screen, but reverted in a way of having it being said externally to yourself. Putting this anger you have for the world into modern culture and the way things are said in it, and how the news and politicians and those who ride along sound. Nothing should change. Don't vote. If we hate you, it's your problem. If you're poor, you're useless. We won't help you. And in fact, the only way to help yourself is to make your own sense of self die and sacrifice your own morals. And some of these seem very personal, yet they are all very true. Like the line on not being smart unless you pay for it. Don't spend a truckload of money to have a paper that tells you you are worth something. You aren't, at least according to a lot of modern society. I'm going to get a little personal here, but frankly, I can't help it. The nature of this game and its story and how it affected me requires me to say why it did. I grew up not in a suburb, but in a lower middle class family in the South that struggled some. I never went without food, but certainly we had some struggling times. My dad died when I was a preteen. All my life, in that small town, that small family, and even now, when I speak to them, they say, "You look just like your father," without fail. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. I can't even go to the local gas station or grocery store without running into at least one of my dad's old friends telling me I look just like him. Now, you can imagine why in this game said this line in this setting, it was a gut punch to me. It was the last thing I was expecting. The other TV messages, the change in setting, all of it had disturbed me and spoke to me. But this genuinely upset me in a way a video game hasn't in a very long time. I refuse to speculate on Bryce's family life, or what he meant, if anything, about that line. So I'm not at all saying he had the same feeling and experience with his father. This is solely me, my interpretation of the game due to my own experiences. How in that single moment, a game made by a complete stranger, a completely different life, felt like it was made to speak to me. I re-enter the house. I retrace my steps through the winding hallway, till I emerge in the room with myself. I look at this representation of myself, the words of the thing that spoke to me at the beginning of this trip in Wonderland in my head. Do not feed it with what I bleed. But I want to see what happens. I equip the blade and slash the figure representing me. He falls, I fall. I take a vial, I take the blood, I take my blood. I enter the birch room, my room. I take my blood and I empty it into the waters. I close my eyes and emerge in a new world. This world, looking out over a skyline. A product of the world that raised you. I don't blame you, though you've murdered the child of your blood, as is what previously happened to you. You don't deserve sympathy, but I am sorry. I hope they end up better than you. Ending 3. The Cycle. What a bold ending. Angry yet sympathetic, saying we've all killed our inner child, and for that is a pity. It even says it had already previously happened, but now in the game we literally enact it. The topic of the inner child is a complex one, but I think its use here, especially with the context of this being an expression of a teenager becoming an adult, is just mwah. It's so good. The reflections on one having to cast aside their idealism, innocence, the fact that in many ways we have directly cut these things away. Not literally with a knife, but through direct actions of our own, maturing in this world. But there's still some sympathy there. A product of the world that raised you, I think, makes that clear. The name itself, The Cycle, is one of the few endings that does not talk about the fictional state of the world of Fatum Betula, but instead us, our world. Cast aside any notion of that fictional world, instead drags us here, a product of this world, a world that's unjust and slowly but surely made us kill our inner child. But I need to say something to you, to myself. Though I'm no longer the bright-eyed child I once was, I still consider myself an idealist. If one day I ever stop that, then maybe I say my inner child is truly dead. The idealism we once had is still important, no matter if it is achievable or not, no matter if the world around us is bleak and the people in it don't want to fix anything. Our inner childs are not dead. They're not slain. Though their blood has fed this scary world we live in, it is not our fault. They were taken from us. They may be bound, but they are not broken, and they are still you. And even if we look just like our fathers, we are not them. You are you, I am me. And I will always be me, even if the child I once was is bound. It is okay to be angry at the world, at people, at politics, at health, at money, but don't let it defeat you. Live and persevere. Go out there and to be real. Well, For those of you who skipped the conclusion, you just missed a personal therapy session, but maybe that's for the best. I think it's needless to say that I like this game. I like Bryce's vision of this world and the thoughts he put into it. It is a valuable artifact of a certain mindset, put into an interactive form. The world is fun to explore and often beautiful, with a charm to it and new paths being uncovered one playthrough after the next, as well as many secrets that make it worth replaying, one of which even lets you get a behind-the-scenes view of the making of the game with Bryce. The characters are interesting, and all carry a very fine theme person to person, questioning life, death, the afterlife, existential terrors that come with these topics. The music is also great. The game suffers a little, mostly in my opinion, from a lack of extra dialogue. As it is, the game is very concise. Perhaps that's actually a plus for you, but for me, I would have loved to speak more to the inhabitants of this strange world and hear more of their ramblings and views on the topics of the story, as Bryce's writing is very appealing to me. The PS1 aesthetic is masterfully done, and for those into this genre and aesthetic, this is a no-brainer in my opinion. Get it. The world feels authentically like a game of the era, with purposefully limited graphics that are still fantastic. Simple but satisfying gameplay, and a charm within its limitations. But within those limitations is something fascinating. Not just within the graphical style and gameplay, but even the writing. There's this permeating anxiety and nihilistic rumination that is present in everything, and it really makes the mood of the game and all its characters, endings, and themes a cohesive package the less talented creator could not put in a game so authentically. This game had more of a budget, more people working on it. If it was made at a different time in the creator's life, it would not be such a singular, unique, personal feeling and great game. The limitations of it, be it where Bryce was in his life, his experience, the engine he used, the graphics he chose, made it what it is. And what it is, pretty great. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I like this game quite a bit. My original plan was actually to cover all the endings, but I think that I would rather have people play the game themselves and find which endings appeal to them the most, and if anything reaches them in a personal way, like one of the endings here did to me. In fact, with this video, I didn't even cover, like, every zone, and there are many things for you to find, and many things for you to do if you do decide to play this game, so please do. And Bryce does have another game, Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia, where he takes the fishing present in this game and makes an entire game out of it, more refined, of course, and it's a very cute, still a little spooky game. And he's also working on a new game which looks absolutely amazing, called 500 Caliber Contracts. It looks great. I'm really excited for it. Check it out. In the meantime, play his earlier games. I recommend them. This has been your Resident Eccentric, and I will see you again. Farewell.
A little bird told me that you've been asking around town about a resident eccentric. I'd like to know why.